So, Rob, what we usually do, mate, with the Bare Truth podcast, we take it sort of right back to sort of the start, growing up, early days, where home was, family life, school, and yeah, go from there, buddy. I'm really looking forward to this. I know you got Scottish heritage as well, so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward, mate, just to knowing your story and sort of how it all came about to where you are now.
So I'm probably a little bit different to anyone you've had on the podcast, or probably anyone else that's involved in combat sports in the United Kingdom. In fact, I know I am, because I was actually born and raised in the Outer Hebrides, which are the islands at the north of Scotland.
Okay.
So just to give people a little idea of what it's like and sort of my background up there. In primary school, I had like 3 other kids in my year. And then moving into secondary school, I think my whole year I had about 20 kids and 26 kids, I think, roughly. So it's literally up in the middle of nowhere. It's
What's the population, Rob?
I lived on an island. I don't know what the general population is for the whole Outer Hebrides, but the island that I lived on had a population of 300 people, I think.
Wow.
So it's tiny, yeah. They're actually they're old Viking settlements. So when the Vikings came over and tried to invade the UK, they settled in the islands at the top, so the Hebrides and Shetland. So a lot of the community up there was sort of fishing communities. So a lot of the guys went out fishing as soon as they got old enough, and that's probably where I would have gone if our parents, me and my brother, didn't move us down into North Wales, which we saw. I think I was 14, if I remember rightly, when I moved down onto the mainland. So that was quite different for me, because it was like, wow, this is big. Like going into a new school, and there was like 20 people. There was like 30 people in my form class, over 100 people in the year. So it was very different for me, very nerve wracking. But yeah, it's one of them things I sort of adjusted to. My mum was from North Wales and my dad was from Scotland, so they decided to move us down here when we got a little bit older, just because there's more opportunities, more going on. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. That must have been a massive sort of culture shock as well at that age, to 14. So obviously you're quite, you probably think at that point of thinking, what am I going to be doing moving forward? Was it something your mum and dad spoke about in terms of moving away from the islands for a while, or?
I'm not sure, mate, to be honest. I can't really remember, to be honest. I think they may have, just on the basis that there would have been more opportunities for me and my brother growing up.
Yeah.
So, but it was a culture shock. We used to come on holiday down here every year, because obviously my mum and my nan who lived down here, we used to come down and see my nan. So I was aware of like the surroundings and stuff, but to move like, well, it's a different country as well. So,
yeah, sure.
But it was a completely different environment. I remember when we moved down here, I was just playing football every night on the field close to me with my brother. Didn't know anyone. But when you get thrown into school at that age, you soon make friends and stuff. And I was like a new toy, because I spoke differently to everyone else. And believe it or not, I had a really, really deep, thick Scottish accent. It's gone completely now, but yeah, I'm quite proud of my Scottish roots. Like I said, there's no one else that I know that's fighting in combat sport in anywhere in the world from where I'm from. So I'm quite proud of that.
That's a big deal, mate. To be fair, it is a big deal. And in terms, sort of, I think as well, like, it does have an appeal. I think I'm sort of at an age in life where you think, you know what, it is nice to just unplug sometimes and almost live that simple life away from society and the cities and whatever else. So I mean, it does have an appeal. But obviously, for two young lads, are you the younger brother or the older brother?
No, I'm the older one. My little brother now lives. He's. I got the brawn. He got the brains. He's in Manchester. He's in a very well paid job. He's doing really well in Manchester. So,
which again,
a massive city. Yeah. So he's gone bigger now. I still live in North Wales, which is it's busy, but he's gone a step further and moved into the city. Like so.
I was up in I don't know how close to you, but Welshpool. So I was in Welshpool for a while working.
Yeah.
And that's
Wales isn't
right on the
too big,
border,
so
isn't it? Right on the border, I think.
yeah. So where I am, I live in Deeside, which is on the border of Chester. I'm about
Okay, yeah.
I'm only about, I think, a 45-minute drive from Liverpool.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm quite close to Liverpool. I do a lot of my training on the Wirral and up in Wigan as well, which is about an hour's drive for me. So
Yeah,
um,
I used to be Ellesmere Port as well, so I
oh
was at
yeah, that's not
Ellesmere
far.
Port
It's
for
down
a
the road,
while.
yeah.
Yeah, which obviously real close links to Liverpool
Yeah.
and whatnot. So yeah, I do know the area quite well. So when you were on the islands then, Rob, did you get into any sort of training, boxing training, or were you just sort of a young lad sort of finding his own way? Did that come about after you moved to North Wales?
It's not a strange one, but I was just football mad when I was a kid. I was obsessed with football, even when I was in. So from Scotland, moving down to North Wales when I was in high school, just football, 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 and then I sort of stopped playing when I was about 18 or 19. I think I had a couple of bad injuries when I was younger. I played at an okay level. I played for Airbus. Um,
Okay, yeah.
Semi-professional in the academy, but I was never going to make it as a pro footballer. I just enjoyed playing, like any other lad at that age, I suppose.
Yeah.
In regards to training combat sports, I mean, when I moved to Wales, I was in and out of a boxing gym a little bit as a kid, but just now and then, it wasn't anything sort of serious and stuff.
No.
I didn't actually take up training properly until I was 26,
Okay. So you
so
so
I was very late to it. Yeah.
sort of following your school days then and leaving school. Were you because you come across as just a lovely humble guy, if I'm honest, and I think that in all your interviews, some people sometimes come across in certain manner. Um, I don't get that vibe from you of a really sort of tough upbringing, lots of street fights in your teens, alcohol, drugs. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Was that sort of a path that you had in your life, or were you able to sort of leave school and go into employment, and that was the focus?
Um, well, I'll go into this a little bit more as we go on, but I was brought up brilliantly. I can't complain about the way I was brought up as a kid. My mum and dad done a brilliant job. I had a really good friends group growing up. Very rarely in trouble. There was obviously like the odd stuff you do as a young lad and get a slap on the wrist for and stuff. But I'm quite proud to say I've never been in trouble with the police or anything like that.
Yeah,
But once I sort of stopped playing football and stuff, I ended up just as a normal lad. I'd be going out 2 or 3 times a week um, on the drink and stuff, and started smoking. I didn't really have any sort of direction with things. I must have had in me working life. Ooh, it's close to 100 different jobs. I couldn't seem to sort of stick at a job for more. I think the longest job I had was 2 years, and then it was sort of after that 5 months, 4 months, 2 months, a few weeks, and I was constantly moving through jobs. I couldn't commit. I couldn't settle. And I
why do
was,
you
I
think that
was.
was, Rob? Why do you think that was? Was it down to like just the fact that you knew that you weren't where you wanted to be, or was it that what was causing that sort of effect? Just not settling.
I think there's a number of reasons for it. I hadn't sort of quite found what I wanted to do with my life. There was no sort of direction for me leaving school. Um, the drinking stuff, I used to get myself in like bad states, and I mean, I wasn't just going out and drinking. I was getting paralytic and stuff. Um, it's only recently I've started going through like assessments for ADHD and autism, because I believe that's answers a lot of the questions I was asking myself when I was younger. I was going out drinking and that to sort of mask sort of how I was feeling about things. And I don't like putting labels on stuff and jumping to conclusions. And and sort of saying like that's the reason for it, that's the reason for it, or labeling someone as like having autism or ADHD. But I actually work in that sector. I'm a care worker, so
Okay.
I've been doing that for the last 4 years, and I've sort of realised that there's definitely something with myself. So yeah, going back to that, I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I was jumping all around the place. I was always out getting drunk, and I was a heavy smoker when I was younger, and I was just like, what am I doing? What do I want to achieve with my life? Like, what am I good at? Like, can I do something with myself? And I decided I wanted to take up mixed martial arts. I was always a fan of like the UFC, going back to the early days of that. And originally, I just did it to lose weight and get fit. I thought I'm going to go. I've tried going to gyms and I got bored, and so I thought I'll try taking up MMA as a hobby, and I got hooked on it, mate. I just got absolutely hooked in.
So what age were you then, Rob? Sorry, about 20,
26, yeah, 26,
26.
I think, yeah. So I was very late starting. But there was nothing sort of around mixed martial arts around my area until I was that age. So um, yeah, I got into the MMA as a hobby, like I said, to lose weight, and I think I lost 3 or 4 stone doing it. Um, I got I got hooked on it, and then I decided, you know what, I want to give this a go and have a fight.
Yeah.
But I had no background in any sort of combat sports, so I ended up throwing myself into fights, not trained properly, like just wanting to learn while I was in the cage, and I won my first 2 fights really quick. I think they were both knockouts within the first 20 seconds. The opposition wasn't great, you know. Your first couple, you get sort of journeyman type guys, um, and then I got moved on to my third amateur fight, and it was sort of a wake up call. I got stopped in round 1, and I was like, "Oh, I need to. If I want to do this, I've got to take this a lot more serious than I am. I've got to really train properly, and maybe I even had little doubts there. Maybe I'm not cut out for it, but I want to try to see where I can get to with it."
Yeah. And in terms of the MMA, Rob, what was you say first couple of fights you had very fast knockouts? Was that through just punching the guy basically, or what was your sort of strengths in MMA compared to your weaknesses? Because obviously bare knuckle is just more solely focused upon the boxing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else did you do in terms of the MMA? Were you training like in jiu-jitsu or any specific fields?
Well, when I started, I was like I said, there wasn't much going on around my area for mixed martial arts. So when I started and when I started fighting, I was literally just doing PTs. So when I say I wasn't training properly, I really wasn't. I was probably doing 3 hours of mixed martial arts a week, and then everything else I was just sort of training myself. So like going for runs, and I didn't join a jiu-jitsu gym until 2 years after, I believe.
Right.
Um, so I didn't jump into a fight straight away. I trained for a couple of years before fighting, but I still wasn't trained properly. I was literally doing PTs 3 times a week. I was getting maybe one spar every month when other people were down in the gym that I could spar. But it was pretty daft. But I needed to do it because I started so late. I was still young for the heavyweights, like very
Yeah.
young for the heavyweights. But I just thought I need to get in there and see what it feels like getting it and competing in front of a crowd. And yeah, so I sort of threw myself into it in the deep end. And like I said, the first 2 guys, I stopped pretty quick. The first one was ground and pound, and the second one was, I think it was a hook. Remember rightly, it was a while ago now. But yeah, I think it was a hook. So, but boxing was never my strong point, you know.
Really?
I didn't have a background in anything, so I can't say boxing was one of my strong points. Now it's my strongest point.
Yeah. Yeah. But
But
at the time,
we're jumping forward quite a bit there. Yeah, but at the time, it's like, yeah, I was such a novice when I look back at it. I was like, I shouldn't have been in the cage, but I was.
What? How did that feel, Rob? As well, sort of, because obviously, like you said, you'd gone from sort of young, early 20s through, and a lot of heavy drinking and everything else, to then thinking, no, do you know what? So you focus on the training and the MMA. Did
Yeah,
that sort of help you as well mentally? That sort of stability and routine. Did that help in terms of what you were sort of what you'd gone through prior?
yeah. So I am a nightmare. Like honestly, like my missus has been amazing. We've been together like 10 years now, and she's put up with like the behaviour that I was showing for this amount of time. If I don't have a routine and my week planned, I go like so down so quick. My mood just drops, and I'm just like all over the place. It's mad. So like the mixed martial arts and the boxing and what I'm doing now, because I've got a strict my routine now is off. It's just mad. Like I get up at like 5 o'clock every day. I've got certain things I have to do before 6 o'clock. It's just all planned, but it works for me. It keeps me sort of level. Um, but yeah, so I like going back to having a routine. Definitely, the training is the best thing for mental health. Like
Yeah,
I'll have to do it for the rest of my life in some capacity. But I love it. Like a lot of people don't like fight camps and stuff. I love them. Like they're hard, but I love getting in the gym. I love everything about training. Even when it's like a really horrible day or sparring or whatever, I just love being in the gym with like teammates and learning and getting better.
yeah, definitely. You say that you've been with your partner now over 10 years. Like so that
Yeah,
is massive impact as well. I'm guessing in terms of your life and who you are now today, not only yourself but as a couple as well.
yeah. So we met by accident in a bar. I wasn't meant to be in. I was actually at my friend's house, and I got kicked out because I lit a cigarette up in his bedroom, and his mum and dad at the time hated smoking. So it was like they just told me to get out, and I was like, "Well, what am I going to do now?" And then I rung one of my other mates, and they were in a pub, and so I went down to see them, and her, I think I can't remember who she was with. I think it was their auntie and a mum or something. They sat down on a table next to us, and they were just so loud and noisy, and they were doing me head in. So I walked outside for a cigarette, and I thought I cannot be bothered with them. Like I need to go to a different bar because they were just noisy. But yeah, just ever since then, um, 10 and a half years later or whatever it is, she's still here. So I must be doing something right because yeah, she's a little gem, mate. She puts up with me going all over the place to train and being skint because I've got to pay for training and trying to chase the dreams that I've got. And she supports everything. So
Yeah, that's fantastic, mate.
without people like that in your life, it's harder to do. She keeps pushing me. Like some days when I'm in one of them moods where I'm down and stuff. She sort of she recognizes it before I do, and she can pick me up pretty quickly. So I'm very very grateful for that because it
That's
would be a lot
fantastic.
more difficult without it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's fantastic for you to have that support as well. I know as a fighter, I know one he's a pal now anyway. Another fighter, Dean Taff Morris, who's North Wales, and Kaylee, his partner, she's exactly the same. He says,
Yeah,
she gets me up, she gets me out. She's sort of right up, out training. Come on, you've got to do it, and um, I think it's great, and as well, you're speaking about it, sort of like saying with in some capacity now for the rest of your life you're going to be training because that's what your medicine is in terms of your mental health. And hear it, mate, every single time I speak to people in the fight game, they're combat sports. They're always saying it's priceless to them, the actual training and fighting. It's when they're not training and fighting then the demons start to come in, and that's when the problems start. But is that
if
the
I
same
have
for you, Rob? Is it
yeah,
similar?
yeah, even if I have like a few days away from training, like I spiral down, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing, nothing sort of brings me back up. like training. It's the endorphins I need, and like the dopamine hits that I need. I've got very low sort of levels of dopamine, and I think it's hard for me to produce because going back thinking about the ADHD and the autism kind of thing. So I think it's harder for me to produce that without sort of an output. So when I'm training, even like the days where you sort of don't want to go, you never feel bad for going. Like after it, you're always, I'm always on cloud nine, and I'm guessing obviously a lot of other people are as well. Um, and I'm lucky to train with the people I train with as well, because it took me a long time to sort of find the right environment. I've been in a few different gyms, and they've all been great, all been fantastic, coaches, teammates. But the guys I'm training with now, it just clicks. Like it just works out perfect, like what I'm doing. So
I think you know in yourself, don't you? If you know, no disrespect to anyone else whatsoever, but it's just that where you'll know if it feels right for you when it's at home and everything's working and everyone sort of gets it and they're all on the same page. It's got to be a massive lift, and I suppose that's one of them things you don't know until you have it, do you? So until
that's
you
it.
actually, until you do move a gym or you do look at different coaches or trainers, yeah,
I've worked with some really good coaches and really good teammates and stuff, and they've all been brilliant. Like I couldn't say a bad word about anyone, like because they've all done great by me, and I've loved training with all of them. But I just feel like now I'm settled, and I've found sort of the way to train that suits me really really good, and the people around me, the people that are coaching me, I just feel sort of at home with it, and I'm really settled, and that's what I needed.
yeah.
And like I said, it just clicks. It just really clicks for me. So I'm very grateful for having that as well. It's hard to come by, and I'm really made up. I've got it.
No, fantastic, mate. I'm really happy for you. So, Rob, how did you get them, mate? How did you go from MMA fighting in a cage to then say, right, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to focus on the bare knuckle side of things.
So I had sort of a mixed amateur career in the MMA, some wins, some losses. But like I said, a lot of the fights I took and was in, I shouldn't have took. I was trying to learn how to fight in a live scenario instead of being in the gym and yeah. So I was literally, everyone's learning on the job, but I really really was learning on the job. And if I could, I wouldn't change it, because I wouldn't be where I am right now if I never did everything I've done. But if I could go back and sort of do things a little bit differently, I would have.
Yeah,
Just because I probably made some incorrect decisions, naive decisions as a young fighter.
sure.
But at the time, I felt like it was what I needed to do. So I don't regret it. So we were in the amateur MMA, and then we had the COVID lockdown, and everything just shut. So I couldn't train properly anywhere. I was lucky enough to have access to a friend's gym to do some stuff in. So I got offered then. I think if I remember how it went right, I sent the BKB page a message and just said, if you need any heavyweight fighters in the future, it might be something I'm interested in. And I got a message back, I think the same day, asking me to contact the promoter. So I did, and they said that they would be interested if I wanted to fight. They asked for some videos of my fights. They asked for my credentials. So I sent all that across, and they said, "Yeah, we'll have you on if you're looking. We don't know when we're going to do a show because of the lockdowns and stuff." But
And was that your first bare knuckle debut then, Rob? Was that the Podmore lockdown?
was, mate, yeah.
It was,
I fought for the British heavyweight title in my first ever bare knuckle fight. I'd never boxed. I'd never learned how to box properly. I trained myself basically for the fight. I did some, like, because it was lockdown, I did some pad work sessions with some coaches, and I managed to get a couple of guys to spar now and again. But I near enough trained myself in that fight. all the gyms were shut.
It was
It was a
horrendous,
nightmare.
mate. It was. I'm just gonna get your take on it. I remember at the time the amount of gyms that closed and the people who were suffering, like, and the mental health was at such a bad point, and they couldn't get into gyms. I remember, like, there were people trying to do online gyms and getting people doing stuff over Zoom, but it was absolutely horrendous. I know some guys who actually got around it somewhere. I'm not entirely sure how they managed to get around it, but they did in
I
terms of
got
the gyms. But
I got around it a bit. I managed to train a little bit because I had some friends that would let me, because I went to the BKB. I was classed as a pro athlete,
yeah,
so pro athletes were allowed to train, but it was only one-on-one with a coach, or I think they had fucking bubbles or something.
yeah.
But I don't want to get too much into the COVID things. I've got some very strong views, and they're quite. It
Save
pisses me
it for
off.
another time, mate. We'll save
Yeah,
that for another time. But no, I know it was a horrendous state in a lot. You know, the whole thing was
I think it was just a big fucking joke myself, mate. To be honest,
yeah,
I think the way they handled it, and I think I'll briefly say I think it's a real thing, but I think the way it was handled was an absolute joke.
yeah. It was
People like
appalling.
would stop seeing their relatives when they died, and then off having parties and down the
Yeah.
street. Yeah, but we
You
were
go, yeah, it's nothing short of scandalous, mate, is it? I'm
exactly.
sure at some point in the future it'll all blow up. You know, at the minute it's still very much sort of kept under wraps, and it's you know, you're not meant to talk about, you're not meant to do, you know. I mean, to be fair, one of the words I think that gets flagged up on YouTube and it affects the algorithms and stuff
Was it?
with yeah, it's all bollocks, mate. At the end of the day, do you know what I mean? I think people should be able to speak up and say their feelings and in an open
Exactly.
way, and everyone's got an opinion, and I don't think anybody's opinion is any less or above, you know, somebody else's. But
People should still be allowed to voice their opinion on things. I don't know why the world's gone like that.
it's
Now,
crazy.
you don't have to listen to everyone's opinion. I've been in situations where I've had like shitty messages over fights, and people were almost trolling. I have been trolled over fights, and not just by people I don't know. People I know have sent me shitty messages over fights when I've lost, but they're still entitled to their opinion, and that's why I
Yeah,
don't like. I used to care so much, but I don't know. Like, say what you want to say. It's up to you. It doesn't change my life. Like that's my attitude on it right now. It's like nothing. At the end of the day, nothing even really matters what happens, does it? It's like we're all going to die. So
yeah,
whatever happens in between, we're here to sort of live the best we can, and sort of chase what we want to chase, and speak how we want to speak. I think people,
you've got to have that voice. You know,
yeah,
as soon as we get to a point, which is worrying, but as soon as we get to a point that people are being silenced left, right, and centre for having an opinion and for having, but I mean, obviously, there's a massive difference between freedom of speech and hate speech. I get that,
of course, yeah, of
but
course,
you can't take away people's freedom of speech, you know, and it's like anything, you know, we're given these rights, we're given these, you know, human rights, if you like. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that if you don't use them, you lose them, and they're taken away. And it's happening in this country and throughout the UK, like so much. And it's shocking, really. I don't know what the answer is, Rob, to be honest.
it's like you're not allowed to challenge anything anymore. I think that's one of the issues. You're not allowed to speak up and challenge. Like Russell Brand
yeah,
spoke up. He was on a podcast, one of the big podcasts, TV shows in America, and he challenged government. He challenged all these pharmaceutical companies and called them out, and everything he said was correct. So then they start hitting him with like sexual assault allegations, and because they know that's what'll hurt him,
yeah.
and they'll cancel him. But now it's gone quiet. Why isn't he in prison if he did it?
It's it's it's
He defended himself, and he spoke out, and he said, "This is going to happen. This is what they're going to try," and they did. But now you don't hear anything about it. Now it's like it never even happened because
yeah.
they tried to ruin him
It's
and they
crazy,
didn't
mate.
succeed. Yeah,
It is crazy, and I hope to God. I mean, I've got my little lad here next to me, but I hope that for his sake, given, if I fast forward 10, 11 years, he's going to be at that school leaving age as well. So you want to, that's what worries me more than anything,
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Is the little ones coming through and that as well. But anyway,
we massively
digress. We massively
yeah,
digressed
sorry,
there. Opened
Getting
up
all political.
worms, but so obviously, BKB lockdown. The Podmore fight. You were fighting for the British title, heavyweight title.
Yeah.
Madness, really, to think that you were put into it. And I remember you were cut where you got a cut just above the eye. And was it he got you with a left hook again on at the same point, and then the ref stopped it, didn't he? I think at that point.
I think he cut me in the first round, if I remember, and it bled out straight away. And it was a nasty cut, like it was deep, and it was 2 lacerations on the eyebrow. Still got some nasty scars up there, and they did really well to stop the bleeding for as long as they did.
Yeah.
The cut woman in the corner and the doctor and that had a good look at it every single time I went back. But I held my own for most of the fight. He was winning.
Yeah,
he was outpointing me, absolutely. I can't say any difference there.
You wouldn't have known watching that fight though that you'd sort of come straight into it from MMA with not without the real sort of training and credentials, if you like, to go into a British title fight.
He was far more experienced than me. He'd had a lot of fights down Podmore, and he's still the world champion. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, and he's knocked. I think he's knocked every other opponent out since me, out cold, bar one. And that was the Russian lad he fought in Thailand. He's literally, I think he's sparked everyone.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a fighter. He's a good pal of mine now. We speak a bit. He's a good pal of mine. Yeah. So yeah, I was thrown in the deep end. I knew I was thrown in the deep end, but it's kind of what I did in the amateur MMA days as well. So
where did you go from there? Yeah, where did you go from there then, Rob? After the Podmore fight, was it because obviously I'm guessing was you still under lockdown at that point anyway? Did you manage to get any more fights in during lockdown, or was it then?
We were trying for some MMA ones. A couple of shows said they were going to put shows on, but they couldn't get it past. Like without fans, a lot of the regional MMA shows need ticket sales to go ahead. So I was matched on a couple, and they both collapsed. So then I took a second BKB fight. That was a mad one as well. I trained. I trained with a boxing coach for this one. Good friend of mine. So I was a bit more prepared. I didn't really have sparring for it again because we were in lockdown. There was no one for me to spar, but I had a boxing coach, which was much better. But I fought terrible. My coach, unfortunately, wasn't able to go with me. He called me the weekend before. His work wouldn't allow him to go because of the lockdown situation. I think they threatened him with his job. And he just said, he's got a family and that. And I was like, mate, I understand. Yeah. Like, do not worry whatsoever. So I got another good friend of mine to come a kickboxing coach. My opponent also dropped it. That's another thing we haven't got into. I've had more pullouts in fights than any fighter in the UK. I can tell you that now. I think even with BKFC, I've had 6 or 7 different opponents for 2 fights. Mad. But my amateur MMAs, just going back to that briefly, I had 13 pullouts in 6 fights, and I most of the lads I fought, I only fought 2 of the lads I was originally matched, and the other ones were all pullouts on fight week. So I was getting matched last minute with guys, and they were like well more experienced than me, training out of big gyms, and it was like, yeah, it was mental. But yeah, going back to the BKB. So my opponent dropped out this one. I think the lad I was met fight done something to his hand. I think he sprained his hand or broke his hand. So I got matched with Carl Hobley. Now Carl again has gone on and become British heavyweight champ, and I think he was world cruiserweight champ or British cruiserweight champ with them. So again, thrown him in the deep end.
Massively, yeah.
And I fought terribly. That's the worst I've ever fought. but my head wasn't in it. Like, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, that like excuse." Carl fought well. Carl took on a week's notice and he fought well, and Carl's really good. But my head wasn't there. I was like all over the place with it. My coach wasn't with me that was meant to go, and then the dropouts again, and I just felt off, like really off on fight day. So I was, yeah, it's probably the worst performance I've ever put in bare knuckle. That one, I lost on a decision, and it was a blatant unanimous decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, so following that, with that, I decided to go back to the MMA once things started opening back up, and I got signed. I decided to go pro, and I got signed by EFC in South Africa, which was oh no, I didn't. I tell a lie. I decided to go pro, and I made my pro debut up in Huddersfield first. I won that one first round stoppage, ground and pound again. Pretty quick. I think it was 2 minutes in or something. So that felt really nice after losing them bare knuckle fights on a decision and a cut. I was like, that was nice to get that win in. And then I signed a fight with EFC out in South Africa, which was crazy. Like for the second pro fight, going to the other side of the world to fight over there.
Had you ever been? Because obviously, again, like taking it back to where you started out in a 300 population island, and then you're traveling to South Africa for a fight, and how was that? How does that at the time? I mean, even at the time, it doesn't really matter what age you're at in terms of. It must have still been a huge thing for you, Rob, at that point.
Yeah, it really was. I basically I signed the fight deal with them, and then I moved to the gym I'm still at now, Trident Mixed Martial Arts, and that's when I started settling down and started finding my way a bit with it. But it was a massive thing. They matched me with a guy that was, if he beats me, he's fighting for their world title, and it was my second pro fight, and I knew I was getting a little bit stitched up, but I thought, Joe, what? Why not? I can beat him, but I'll go into this in more detail in a minute. I was beat, and I'm not taking anything away from the opponent or anything like that, but I was beat before I got in the cage. I used to suffer extremely bad with like pre-fight anxiety and stuff. And again, this all stems back to this autism ADHD thing, I believe. So I was a mess. I was putting on a brave face, but I was shitting it, like going into that fight. Like the whole thing, the fight week and that, I'd never done anything like before. I was doing photo shoots, I was doing interviews. It was like the UFC, the setup. Yeah. It was really big. I had to go and have my blood done, brain scan while I was there. It was all over the place. I was cutting weight as well. It was a really good setup. Like it was a big show, and I was fucking not ready for it in my second professional fight.
No, I was like,
wow, this is a huge deal. And when I lost that fight, my second professional MMA fight, I remember coming back to the hotel. My coach Nathan, who was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Throughout the whole fight week, he got my weight cut on points. He could see when my nerves were kicking in, and he was settling me down. He was just a rock while I was there. If I didn't have him out there with me, it would have been even worse. He was brilliant. But when I got back to the hotel, Nathan said, I'm going to go up to the room, and I said, I'm going to just sit down. I'll have a beer down here on my own. And it started pissing with rain. And I remember sitting there, and it was pissing with rain all over me. And I rung my missus on FaceTime, and I just said to her, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. I was like, I've had enough. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm not putting myself through it. Maybe this isn't for me. I was like, I've probably started too late to make anything of it. And she was being very more level-headed and rational. She was basically saying to me, you're acting on raw emotion. Give it a chance to breathe. And then I started getting trolled. I was getting really horrible messages, like people just jumping on, giving their opinions and that. There was horrible comments made when they posted the video online. There was like, and I was reading too much into it. I was like, I was getting emotionally involved too much. I was commenting back to people, and I shouldn't have. I really shouldn't have. But
It's
when you're in that
difficult,
sort of
isn't
state of
it?
mind, yeah,
Yeah, I know it's difficult at times. Like even in the sort of corner of YouTube, if you like, where we are, like there's so much
hate.
yeah, so much negativity, and everyone just seems to be waiting for some to jump on something, or and it's like fucking hell, just like people enjoy your lives. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like have a nice life. For me, I love the sport of bare knuckle boxing. For me, much sooner be at a bare knuckle event than any other event. Any
yeah,
glove boxing, full stop, and but yeah, there just seems to be so much sort of negativity and around it, and I think it's good because I want to sort of be a platform that actually fighters can come onto it, promoters can come onto it, and get that out there, because I think there's a lot of people as well who do want that and do want the content. I know from these podcasts, mate, so much feedback in terms of people coming forward and saying that made that resonated with me, and that made a massive difference. And with people sharing stories. And can you touch, Rob, a bit more on you said like you got like this pre-fight anxiety. Has that always sort of been there from
yeah.
yeah, is that something that you still deal with today, or you managed to sort of get a bit more control over it?
When I say about the pre-fight anxiety, it's not like every fighter gets nervous before the fight. That's like
Yeah,
that's a normal thing. But it almost I can't say this on behalf of any other fighter, but I feel like mine was different. I was terrified. It wasn't even like terrified of getting hit. I was terrified of the outcome if I didn't win. So I was so
that with the
constant.
backlash as well, the backlash of like you're saying, if you've got people trolling, leaving shitty
Yeah,
comments, and
I was so worried about opinions of what people said. I was so worried about how it'd look when you've got to give yourself a bit of self promotion and then you go out there and get stopped, or just scared to even let my hands go and stuff. I froze up so many times, and in fights I could have won. Um, and it sounds like excuses and that, but it isn't. It's just like I was really, really bad, and I went through like again. I don't like using labels on things and stuff, but I definitely went through bouts of depression over it. I was on all sorts of like medication, but I got off that because it wasn't doing anything for me. Again, because I think there was more to it. It's more on the ADHD autism side of things. It's not so much um, pure. I went to doctors and they said there is an aspect of serious depression, anxiety, but they think it's more on the ADHD autism side of thing as well. So, but I definitely went through some bad times. I mean, when I come back from South Africa, I was I was a mess, mate. I was like, I didn't go to work. I was crying every day. I woke up crying. I'd go sleep crying. My missus like was worrying bad about me, and she's the only person I told about it. I kept it locked up. Didn't even tell my coaches. Didn't tell my friends, my mum, my dad, nothing. I kept it all to me, and she's the only one that saw it because if she never saw it, I wouldn't have told her. It was like one of the things I couldn't hide from her because I was crying when I woke up, and I was gonna pack it in. Like I was just gonna pack it in. I was getting, like I said, I had messages sent to me. I wish I kept some of them, but I deleted everything because I didn't want to read it. Just
probably the
basically
best way,
saying,
mate. In some ways, probably the best way. In some ways, just to like,
no, no. I mean, I wish I could have kept to like show people what was being said to me, not
yeah,
like because I want to read them or anything like that.
no,
No,
yeah, just so yeah, the level of what.
just so yeah. There was like people like just general stuff like saying, "Oh, you shit, you shouldn't do this. It's not for you." Blah blah. And then there was like obviously people saying, giving their opinions on how I should fight, and then there was more negative stuff like just hate stuff, like hateful things said, and so I was thinking honestly that I was going to give it up, and I was maybe going to try coaching because there's less. Well, there is pressure on a coach, absolutely, but the spotlight's not as much on you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe if I go down that route with the MMA, that was a thought process. But I took a while off. I decided I'm just going to take a while off and not think about it as much as I can. But that made it worse because I wasn't training as much. And like we said before, not training. So I was finding myself in like a lose-lose situation. And I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know what to do with myself. And it was bad, mate. I was very, very upset. And it's a horrible thing for me to think about. Like I was like, I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to speak to anyone. And it was just like, yeah, this probably the end of me fighting this, because if it's doing this to me, I can't put up with it.
Yeah, I've had similar bouts, if you like, through life, similar things that have, but it's always sort of stemmed with me. But I take it back to my dad's suicide when I was a kid, and then it like just molded me basically, and it's always been there. And then I think through life, certain things can happen, and it can make it worse, or something can, and so yeah, it's really difficult, but you're not on your own, mate, as well. Like there's so many people who who deal and suffer with their own things, and massive credit to you, mate, coming out and speaking and speaking up about it, because like I say, it does make a difference. I can say that hand on heart. I get messages through to my Facebook where people watch it. They don't necessarily comment on YouTube, but
yeah,
they'll come and drop a message on Facebook, and it does make a big difference, mate. So
I'm,
credit
I'm,
all
I'm
credit to you, like
First of all, I'm sorry about your dad, mate. Really sorry that happened to you. But it was
No,
horrible.
I
So
appreciate that, mate. Yeah, and like I say, I mean, it's really, really this me sort of speaking massively openly and honest now. Really difficult, because this last year I've had some really rough times, and um, it's my boy what keeps me going, and like to me it's huge, because I know how affected something like that, like it's something real tragic, especially for a lad as well, because there was no father figure there growing up, no guidance, um, and yeah, really, really difficult. But for me now, and what I would say to anyone that's really, really struggling with mental health and more, like if you've got family, if you've got children, like honest to God, like never do anything that's gonna, leave them in that position, because like the one thing for me now is that is the one thing in life that I could always rule out, because I could
yeah,
never put my son. It doesn't matter how hard life gets for me, I could never put my son through that. And but no, it's tough, mate. Everybody's got a story, I think, and
there's a,
we've
there's a,
all,
there's a lot of people worse off than me. I'm not trying to like make out like like I don't want
no,
anyone to feel
not at
sorry
all,
for me
mate.
or
Do you know
anything
what?
like that. It's
I don't think anything like that has any. There's no like list of this is worse than that or anything else, because everybody goes through life, deals with different things, and has some horrendous things that I had a bad car accident, and following that I had to do a residential in London at Gaz and St Thomas, and there was a guy there from Afghanistan, and he'd had his basically both his legs blown off through a landmine, and this chap had something, you might have heard of it, called phantom limb disorder,
yeah,
and he had tears, I swear to God, like absolute massive bloke, tears down his face continuously, because he was in that much pain that he felt he'd got like broken ankles. He didn't have any legs. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But like the messages and everything else that ran through, and there's so many things that I'm sure everyone sees and does, but everyone's got their own story. Everyone's different, and it doesn't matter. Like might be somebody that says, do you know what, I had the same thing as a kid growing up, and it was an awful experience. But what's just as important is those people out there, especially within combat sports as well, that are having similar experiences to yourself. So obviously somebody like yourself fighting at the platform that you are today, that is going to hopefully send some really good messages out to people, which to me is what it's all about, you know.
I just think if I can do anything like that, James, then anyone can. Do you know what I mean? I'm from a little island in Scotland. I didn't know 5 people, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, I still get huge anxiety when I'm going to training, and it's like I'm almost telling myself not to go. Like, if I'm going to, I don't mean going to like my weights gym or anything like that, but when I'm going like to train up in Wigan with the likes of the Aspinall team, or when I'm going to Trident and training with the guys up there, it's like I don't know why I still get nervous to go, even though I've been training with Trident for 2 years. I don't get up to Aspinall's as often as I like because it's a bit further away for me.
Yeah.
So I have to work around work. But I've been going up every week, every couple of weeks since March, April. I think I started going up. But I still get nervous, and I still like think, I hope I'm okay to be there with them. I hope things like do I belong there with them? And it's like, I think a big thing for me, and I think this stems back to me moving from where I moved to here, is acceptance. So it's like I almost want people to accept me all the time for like who I am, kind of thing. And that's probably why, again, I've moved around jobs so much, and I've sort of gone, right, I don't feel like I belong in this job anymore. I'm going to go to another one. And maybe even with the gyms, like, because I've moved gyms quite a couple of times, it's probably the same thing. And it's like, I need to reassure myself and stuff like that. What I did after South Africa, I took on a mindset coach, a sports therapist, which was a game changer for me. I spoke to him once over Instagram, and then his name's Rob Holdsworth. He's based up in Leeds. The guy's amazing. I done like a taster session with him, and I really liked the sound of what he could offer me. But I couldn't afford it. It was out of my pace grade. I like I said, I'm a care worker. I don't earn a lot of money doing what I do. But so I think 2 weeks after, he got back in touch with me and said, "Listen, I know you need this, so I'm going to do it as a sponsorship for you, and we'll do a weekly meeting. It's like a therapy session for me every week, like counselling, sports counselling.
That's brilliant, yeah.
And I do a little Zoom call, so we're on FaceTime, and he's unlocked my mindset so well. Like, he broke me down to the bare bones and sort of built me back up again. And he is a massive, massive part of why my sort of thought process has changed so much, and why I see fighting now as a process instead of like fearing it. I feel that anxiety feeling that you get backstage or in the bus when you're in the coach when you're on the way to the venue, or wherever you get it. Every fighter gets it. Them butterflies. Them. Oh,
yeah.
I now accept that as part of the process. It's not something I fear. I go, well, that I'm expecting it. Like, that's going to come. I fall asleep before the fights now. Like, I have a nap. I never did that. Like 3 o'clock, last fight in Leeds. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're still in the hotel, and I had an hour nap. We had to leave for the venue at 4:30. And I was like, my missus texted me, and she's like, where have you been? And I was like, I'm just had a sleep. And she went, sleep? You're fighting in 2 hours? I'm like, yeah. But like,
how's your missus found it as well then, obviously, because she, like you say, you know, together for 10 years, so she'll have seen and lived through your anxiety as well, I'm guessing. And
yeah.
You know, how does it, how's that impacted upon you sort of relate? And obviously it's a sports therapist, but that's got to sort of carry on into your sort of daily life as well, I'd guess. And you know,
it does, mate. Yeah, it's changed my sort of thought process, and like I said, the way I can almost conduct the way I think. So if I have sort of a negative thought come into my head or something that's worrying me, I now question it. I'm like, Why is it making me feel like that? And then I always think it's just one of the things that'll pass. Everything that happens that seems so big is actually quite small, unless it's a major event in your life, obviously. But 9 times out of 10, these little things that may piss you off or make you feel upset throughout the day, you can just move past them really quickly.
Yeah.
But my missus, she seen, like I said, she seen me at my lowest. Like, she was like after South Africa, that was my worst. Probably 3 or 4 weeks, maybe longer than that, to be honest. I was in a bad place. But she's also seen me at my happiest. My 2 BKFC fights. She doesn't come and watch live. She hasn't been to watch me live since 2019, before lockdown, or was it lockdown? February 2020.
Yeah.
She couldn't obviously watch me in lockdown, and then I fought in South Africa, and I fought a bit further away. So she stayed at home because we've got a dog and that, so she doesn't want to leave the dog and that. But
Was it yeah, following South Africa, Rob, like you say, you got like a period.
Sorry, we well sidetracked off that. Yeah.
Real. Nah, don't worry, mate. Don't worry. We'll just roll with it. This is what I like anyway. We just, it's I love just having a conversation and letting it flow. You'd gone through like your worst period following that in South Africa, and I can imagine, especially as well, like you're saying, you've gone onto a platform, worldwide, global platform, dealing with interviews, media, all of that hype, if you like, that surrounds it, and then coming back, and I'm guessing you had a rapid decline in terms of your mental health and what was going on at that point, and you said it went on for weeks. Did you have any more fights with BKB, or was that excuse me, was that when BKFC came calling at that point?
So BKB was like 12 to 18 months prior to South Africa. So I hadn't fought bare knuckle again since. I literally decided to go back to MMA. I had the fight in South Africa, and I wasn't there was I don't think there was anything offered BKB wise. I had no interest in fighting bare knuckle again. It wasn't on the cards, and I never thought it would happen again. I was going to concentrate on the MMA, and then that backfired on me a bit. So that's what I mean when I said I didn't know if I was going to continue at all, or. But how did it come about? So I think I was on the train going to training somewhere. Yeah, I was, and I got a message off Andy Bakewell, and he just messaged me and asked how I was, and he'd spoken to me a couple of times before. We'd had general chats and stuff. I've known him for a while, and he said, I might have a fight here for you in August if you want. July it was, sorry. And I said, oh, is it bare knuckle? Because he was running BFBA. And I was like, Andy, I said, I don't know, mate. I think I'm done fighting. So I haven't decided what I'm wanting to do. And he sort of explained what was going to happen briefly. So he said about the BKFC taking over and starting in the UK. It was all hush hush at this point. And it's still, I was excited by it, but I still didn't know whether I wanted to do it, because I was still in the mindset of being upset, and I was still quite low. I was trying to pull myself back together. So I said I'll have a think about it. So I went and trained. I got back later on, and I told my missus, I was like, I've had a sort of, not a fight offer, but someone he's offered me a potential, and she said that I should seriously consider it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's like, I'll sleep on it. So then I spoke to my coach, and I said, what would you think? Now this is Trident now, so I was under a gym, so it wasn't like when I fought BKB, I was sort of doing that for myself. And
yeah.
So I said to my coach, what do you think about me fighting bare knuckle, just to get a bit more experience again and just trying to kill these nerves? I started putting things in place then. So I had therapy with Rob in place. a lad who I'm still working with today as well, Chris Redmond. He does all my strength and conditioning for me. I put up a little thing on the Instagram story saying I was looking for an S&C coach. I've never done it, ever. Never done weight training in my life. And he messaged me saying, "What are you looking for?" And I basically explained to him, I said, I'm within a really tight budget and I know how expensive these things can be, but he
Yeah.
decided to sponsor me as well. Now he's a member of Trident, and what he's done for me as well, like I was just like a lad fighting out. Now I'm like, especially now, like for this next fight, I'm an athlete. Like I'm conditioned to fight, and he's been absolutely brilliant. He's changed everything. Like I've smashed through all my personal bests over the last 12, 18 months lifting weights, which I never thought I'd do. And I'm strong, I'm fast. So he done wonders for me. So he was then put in place. And then Graham, who's now my boxing coach, um, he's the boxing coach at Trident. So I started working closely with him, and he just has changed my striking and my boxing has gone to a different level. Like I can't explain how good that guy is. I've worked with loads of coaches, like I've said in the past, but I click with him so well. I can box now. Like I can box. I've got my hands. I posted a video earlier today, and the difference. I look back at the old one, like I've still got them on my phone, like when I'm hitting pads like 4 years ago and stuff, and it's like a completely different fighter. I'm sharp. I'm fast. I'm powerful, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Like he's done wonders with me striking.